Okay, so this is Meteor Man. It shows when this guy in this movie gets hit by this highly ionized uranium rock, merges with his DNA and gives him superpowers. So if you, as you can see in this part right here, the older gentleman actually touches the same rock that Meteor Man touches, and he's able to get telekinetic powers and see through the wall and whatnot. And also the bad guy in the movie, he actually touches the uranium rock and gets powers instantly. You know what I mean? Because that's how powerful gamma radiation and beta and alpha particles are when they come in contact with melanin. Melanin just absorbs it and soaks it up as energy. And so they've been telling you this in these movies this whole time, but we've been kind of like scared away from it, or we think it's science fiction, but really it's a fact. And this is the type of power uranium rocks is our power. You know what I'm saying? Not the actual rock itself, but the power that the rock withholds, the gamma radiation. And this mineral is most abundant in the Grand Canyon. Is that a coincidence? I don't think so. I think we've been dealing with this a long time ago, and they kind of like separated us from our power. You know what I'm saying? With uranium rocks, you see what Meteor Man's able to do. He's able to fly, jump super high. You know what I'm saying? He's basically like Superman, because we are radioactive ionized gods. That's what we've always been, and they've been trying to hide that from us. And so, like I said, this movie's not streaming on any movie platforms, nowhere. You're gonna have to download this from our off-brand site. So it just goes to show you that they further trying to hide the information about black people being able to absorb highly ionized radiation. So, like I said, he got hit by a uranium highly ionized rock, and they sell this stuff online, but we just don't know nothing about it. So go ahead and purchase the uranium rocks, make necklaces out of them, make bracelets out of them, man. You should be setting off radioactive everything, you know what I'm saying, alarms and all that, because what's going to happen is eventually you're going to start gaining that power back. You're going to start running, and all of a sudden you're going to be sprinting super speed. You're going to jump when you're playing basketball. All of a sudden you're going to jump over the basketball hoop. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about. It's going to happen when you put that radioactive energy inside of melanin. It gives you back that nuclear jump, that nuclear punch.
Let's talk about melanin radiation and how they hide the truth of melanin's radiation absorbing abilities in plain sight. So we've all heard of Superman, one of DC Comics' most famed and well-renowned comic book characters. And if you know Superman, you know that his weakness is kryptonite. But what if I told you that in kryptonite being his weakness, they hide the truth about melanin being a compound that has the ability to absorb and convert all forms of electromagnetic energy or radiation. So what actually is kryptonite? We all know kryptonite is what makes Superman weak, but what actually is it? And how does that tie into melanin's radiation absorbing and converting abilities? They hide the truth in plain sight in these comics and in these movies. Kryptonite is a glowing green radioactive mineral from Superman's home planet Krypton that serves as his primary weakness. It emits radiation that drains his powers, causes intense physical pain, and can lead to death with prolonged exposure. So I actually didn't know this. We all have heard of kryptonite, everyone knows what that is, but I did not know what they actually defined this substance to be, that it was defined as radioactive. Kryptonite is a glowing green radioactive mineral from Superman's home planet Krypton that serves as his primary weakness. Now, this is going to tie into melanin and how radiation affects melanated individuals versus melanin deficient individuals, but we all know Superman Clark Kent is a Caucasian man. And as we're reading this radioactive material that emits radiation, kryptonite is his weakness. It makes him weak, it drains his powers, and causes intense physical pain, and even can cause death. So kryptonite is a glowing green radioactive mineral from Superman's home planet Krypton that serves as his primary weakness. So it is a radioactive mineral. It emits radiation that drains his powers, causes intense physical pain, and can lead to death with prolonged exposure. So that is what kryptonite is defined as. What makes Superman weak is how it emits radiation. It's glowing green and radioactive, just like what we in our world would call radium, which is where we get the word radiation. But what if I told you while radiation has this effect on the Caucasian or on people lacking eumelanin, it has the exact opposite effect on people possessing eumelanin, or otherwise known as black people. So this is what this green radioactive material does to Superman. In the real world, we would call this kryptonite radium. A glowing green radioactive mineral, that's radium. So we know that kryptonite is radioactive. I'm telling you, all these comic book writers, these movie writers, they get this stuff from truth. None of these things are originally their idea. They get all of these things from truth and they put it right in our face, disguised as fiction and entertainment in these movies and TV shows and comic books. So what does radioactive actually mean? Radioactive materials are unstable substances that spontaneously release energy in the form of ionizing radiation, such as alpha particles, beta particles, or gamma rays, to become more stable. This natural process, known as radioactive decay, occurs in atoms with unbalanced nuclear forces, commonly including elements like uranium, radium, and plutonium. So I mentioned radium. Uranium and plutonium are also radioactive substances. So they're saying in these comics, like I said, they get all this from the truth. They just put it in plain sight and call it fiction and call it entertainment. They're saying that kryptonite is a glowing green radioactive substance that makes Superman weak and takes away his powers. Clark Kent, like I said, he is a melanin deficient individual. They put the truth in plain sight, and this radiation makes him weak. This is all based off of the truth. So as we read, radioactive materials, they emit alpha particles, beta particles, or gamma rays, commonly including elements like uranium, radium, and plutonium. So let's break down those three elements. Radium is an intensely radioactive, silvery white alkaline earth metal found in trace amounts in uranium ores. So radium is an intensely radioactive, silvery white alkaline earth metal found in trace amounts in uranium ores. What is uranium? Uranium is a dense silvery white radioactive, we keep seeing that radioactive word, metal found in rock, soil, and water, primarily used as fuel for nuclear power plants and for producing medical isotopes. So we have uranium, another radioactive metal. And lastly, we have plutonium. Plutonium is a radioactive silver white actinide metal mainly produced in nuclear reactors for weapons, energy, and space exploration. So now we know what these three highly radioactive elements are. And going back to the definition of radioactive, radioactive refers to unstable atoms that spontaneously emit energy and particles, known as radiation, to achieve a more stable state. This process, called radioactive decay, involves releasing alpha particles, beta particles, or gamma rays. It is a natural phenomenon, though it can be induced, and it changes the atom into a different element. So radioactive refers to unstable atoms that spontaneously emit energy and particles, known as radiation. So let's go back to what kryptonite is. Kryptonite is a radioactive. So we're seeing this reoccurring overlapping theme of radioactivity. We've gone over radium, plutonium, and uranium, all being real life radioactive elements that emit radiation. So what is kryptonite? Once again, let's review. Kryptonite is a radioactive mineral from Superman's destroyed home planet Krypton, which acts as his ultimate weakness, emitting radiation that weakens, incapacitates, or can even kill him depending on the type. Green kryptonite being the most common form that drains his powers. So we're seeing an overlapping theme here. They're saying that radiation and radioactivity is what weakens Superman. Superman, this melanin deficient individual, Clark Kent. They're putting the truth in plain sight. Radiation has the exact opposite effect on eumelanated individuals, also known as black people, as it does on melanin deficient individuals, also called the Caucasian. And they're putting it in your face in these comics and calling it fiction. So kryptonite is a radioactive mineral from Superman's destroyed home planet of Krypton, which acts as his ultimate weakness, emitting radiation. So radiation weakens this melanin deficient Caucasoid person, Clark Kent Superman. This is the only thing that can weaken Superman, is this radioactive mineral called kryptonite. By emitting radiation, it weakens, incapacitates, or can even kill him, with green kryptonite being the most common form that drains his powers. Like I said, green kryptonite in real life is nothing but radium. As you can see, radium is known for its distinctive bright green glow, which is why in times past they used radium paint to paint clock dials so that the numbers would glow in the dark. We can see radium with its signature bright green glow. Radium or radiation is always associated with this glowing green color. So as we read, kryptonite is a radioactive substance that is known to be green. It emits radiation and it weakens Superman's powers. In real life, that's just radium. But let's look at how eumelanin reacts to radiation and how it has the exact opposite effect on eumelanated individuals as it does on melanin deficient individuals, because it does the exact opposite thing to so-called black people as it does to Caucasians, as depicted in the Superman comics. They know what it does to them versus what it does to us. So as we read, radiation is alpha, beta, and gamma rays or particles. Melanin processing gamma radiation. Melanin acts as a natural radioprotector by absorbing and dissipating gamma radiation energy, often via redox cycling that can generate electric current, because yes, melanin has the ability to generate and conduct electricity as well. That's why they always give all the black superheroes electricity-based powers. It protects against high-energy photons by reducing oxidative stress, and in some organisms, converting radiation into chemical energy. Engineered melanin can increase cell survival against radiation. So we're reading that radium or radiation affects black people or people with melanin or people with eumelanin. It does the exact opposite thing to black people than it does to the so-called Caucasian. So while we read that radium or radiation or radioactivity weakens the Caucasian, that it weakens melanin deficient individuals, we're reading that it does the exact opposite thing to those with melanin or with eumelanin more specifically. Radiation kills them and makes them weak, but melanin has the ability to absorb that radiation and convert it into energy or even electricity. This is not comic book fiction. These are scientific facts, and they put that truth in plain sight in these comic books and comic book movies. Melanin acts as a natural radio protector, so it's protecting you from the radiation by absorbing and dissipating gamma radiation energy. It is absorbing and dissipating this gamma radiation energy, often via redox cycling that can generate electric current. It protects against high-energy photons by reducing oxidative stress and, in some organisms, converting radiation into chemical energy. Engineered melanin can increase cell survival against radiation. Radio protection mechanism. Melanin's complex polymer structure acts as a buffer against ionizing radiation, mitigating damage to cellular components. So melanin is a buffer or shield against radiation. So the reason kryptonite is Superman's weakness is because he does not have melanin, to absorb and convert the radiation into energy. He does not have that protective layer. They're showing you in plain sight how radiation affects them versus us. Energy conversion. Research indicates that melanin can convert gamma radiation into usable energy. Redox activity. Gamma rays interacts with melanin, altering its oxidation reduction potential and causing sustained oxidation, which produces an electric current. This is not comic book fantasy. These are scientifically proven facts and abilities of melanin. So kryptonite, it may weaken Superman, but if Superman was black, kryptonite would be what powers him up because of the melanin. These are scientific aspects of the element or compound of melanin. Engineered applications. Molecularly engineered melanin has been developed to enhance radiation protection. So they're using melanin for its radiation protecting abilities. Melanin processing alpha, beta, and gamma radiation. As we read, radiation defined is alpha, beta, and gamma radiation or rays or particles. Melanin, a complex pigment, provides significant radio protection by absorbing UV visible infrared light and ionizing radiation, gamma/X-rays. Through efficient energy transduction, it acts as a free radical scavenger and, in specialized fungi, can convert gamma radiation into electrical energy. These superpowers, it's not fake. It's scientifically proven facts about what melanin can do. So they give these white Caucasian superheroes in their comics and in these movies, they give them the powers that black people have naturally, that this eumelanin has naturally. This is not fantasy or whatever you want to call it. These are scientifically proven facts. It acts as a free radical scavenger and in specialized fungi can convert gamma radiation into electrical energy. So here we see again melanin being related to electricity or electricity converting abilities. Melanin serves as a protective barrier in both human skin against UV and microorganisms against high energy particles. Gamma radiation. Melanin protects against gamma rays, which have high penetration. Studies show that melanin, particularly in Radiotrophic fungi absorbs this high energy radiation with shielding capacity comparable to that of lead. So melanin can protect you from radiation with the capacity comparable to that of lead. Gamma radiation causes reversible oxidation of melanin, altering its redox potential and potentially aiding in energy production. So kryptonite, which is really just radium, would charge and energize and power up black people. But they're showing you that it is Clark Kent, the white man's weakness. It is his kryptonite. It weakens him. It incapacitates him. It drains his powers. It can even kill him. But as we're going over the scientific proof and the scientific evidence of what melanin is and can do, you're seeing that so-called kryptonite, or what it really is in real life, is radium or radiation. Does the exact opposite thing to black people that it does to the Caucasian or Clark Kent. I'm telling you, they put the truth in these movies and they call it fiction and they call it entertainment. They put it in these comic books and they call it fiction and they call it entertainment. We're seeing, based off of the scientific evidence, that radiation does the exact opposite to black people because of melanin that it does to the Caucasian or those lacking eumelanin. Gamma radiation causes reversible oxidation of melanin, altering its redox potential and potentially aiding in energy production. So it's saying that gamma radiation causes someone with melanin, with eumelanin, to produce more energy. You become capable of conducting more energy. Similar to gamma, beta radiation charged particles is shielded by melanin. And studies indicate that both beta and gamma radiation can promote the growth of melanized fungi. Because if you don't know, plants, when exposed to radiation or when they're growing in a radioactive environment, they grow twice as big. So the same would happen to us, which is why they tell you that radiation is dangerous and it's deadly and all that. No, it's dangerous and it's deadly to them. It does the exact opposite to so-called black people or those possessing eumelanin. Eumelanin being what makes black people black, because not all melanin is the same and not all melanin is created equal. We're talking about eumelanin. So yeah, radium is dangerous and deadly to them. Alpha radiation. As a dense pigment, melanin provides a surface barrier against alpha radiation, which has low penetration capabilities. Biological function. In humans, UV radiation, a form of electromagnetic radiation, induces the production of melanin to protect DNA from photo damage. In extreme environments like Chernobyl, melanized fungi use the pigment to survive high lethal levels of gamma radiation. So what caused all these plants and fungi to be able to survive and thrive in Chernobyl is the melanin that they possess. Melanized fungi use the pigment to survive high lethal levels of gamma radiation. So survive lethal levels. Lethal to those that are melanin deficient, the so-called Caucasian, which is what they made Clark Kent Superman. What is his weakness? Kryptonite. What is kryptonite? A green radioactive material. In real life, that's called radium. And we're reading what radiation or radium does to those with eumelanin, the exact opposite of what it does to Superman. Melanin's ability to absorb various wavelengths is due to its complex polymeric structure, which allows it to act as a broad-spectrum, high-energy absorber and antioxidant. Sounds like we're reading a comic book, but we're not. We're reading over scientifically proven facts of what melanin truly is. They don't hate your skin just because it's brown. They hate it because of what makes it brown. It is so much deeper than racism. So last but not least, I want to wrap this video up by showing how, yes, they know what radium and radiation does to them, and they show that, they depict that through what kryptonite does to Superman, but they also know what radiation or radium or radioactivity does to so-called black people, and they put it in a movie called Meteor Man that came out in 1993. So we know that kryptonite is a green radioactive material that weakens Superman, can even kill him. But in this movie Meteor Man that came out in 1993, they show a rock, a green rock that looks very similar to kryptonite, giving a black man superpowers. Does that not line up with all that we just read? We know that kryptonite is a green, glowing radioactive substance. In real life, that's radium. This kryptonite weakens Superman, it takes away his powers, can even kill him. And we read over all the radiation absorbing abilities of melanin, how melanin can not only absorb and dissipate radioactive energy, but it can convert it into electricity or chemical energy, and can even heighten our energy conducting abilities. In other words, it does the exact opposite to black people that it does to white people. And they put that in this movie called Meteor Man, where they show a very kryptonite-looking green rock give a black man, a melanated black man, superpowers, flight, super strength, super speed. They put it in plain sight that they know how radiation affects us versus them, or radium affects black people versus white people, which those are very simple terms. But a prime example of them showing that they know that radiation affects black people and white people differently is them making Clark Kent's weakness radioactive kryptonite, which is really just radium. And in Meteor Man, they show a kryptonite-looking, radium-looking, green, glowing radioactive rock to give a black man superpowers. It does the exact opposite thing to Meteor Man that it does to Superman. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth in plain sight about what melanin is and can do.